Hi everyone, and welcome back to Midnight Hustlers. Without wasting further time, I'm going to get straight into sharing my Symbiosis interview experience, which was held today because I know a lot of you have your interviews coming up in the next few days. So let's start from the very beginning. So, for introduction, they told me to introduce myself, which is, I guess, a staple question that every interviewer asks. By the way, I had three interviewers interview me. One asked me general questions, and the other two asked me economic specific questions. And I guess they both were economics professors at Symbiosis School of Economics. So, yeah, first they told me to introduce myself, and then they asked me my class 12 board exam results, after which they straight away proceeded to asking me questions related to my subjects, which were related to economics, statistics, and mathematics mainly. And most of the questions were economics related because, as I had heard before as well, that Symbiosis School of Economics likes to get to know if the person has a caliber of, knowing economics in detail because it's an honors course. So, yes, I'll tell you the questions that they asked me. So, they started with asking me the types of economies, then they also asked me what difference is there mainly between the types of economies that I mentioned. The second thing that they asked me was whether I knew about stagflation, and luckily I did, so I explained it to them. Then they asked me if I knew what inflation was, which was, I think, a very easy question. I mean, considering the type of other questions that they asked me after that. So, yeah, I explained what inflation is to them, and then they gave me a situation wherein I was an RBI officer and I needed to curb inflation. So, what methods will I use? That they asked me. And then they asked me whether I knew about the tools and the statistical tools and mathematical tools that economists use in their day to day research activities. Then they asked me about standard deviation, correlation, and types of correlation, and then the examples of correlation. Then they asked me about elasticity of demand and to give some examples of relatively elastic goods, basically commodities that have a relatively elastic demand. And then they asked me some more questions related to economics only, which were mainly related to price mechanism, law of demand, and law of supply. So these were all the questions that they asked me regarding my subject. And yes, it was very academic heavy. It was very heavy in terms of the things they asked, related to economics. It was not much about myself. Like, they didn't ask me questions about myself. They were mainly just asking questions about economics, and that too mainly from the 11th grade textbook of microeconomics. So, I would suggest that if you're also going for the BSc Econ program, then definitely study the 11th textbook in detail. Moving on to the GK and current affairs section, they only asked me two things which were also related to the same topic. So they asked me if I was interested in the Olympics, and I said yes because I had luckily done a lot of reading around it since the past, actually, since the Olympics started. So they just asked me where it was being held. I said Tokyo, and then they asked me if India had won any medals. So I told them that yes, we won three medals. We won our fourth one this morning, and I told them what medal it was and which team won it. And then they asked me to name all of the four medals that we won. So, like the person who won it and the category we won it for. And then they just said that, okay, we're satisfied with your answers. And now they just asked each other if they had any questions for me, and all of them said that they were satisfied with the questions they asked, and then they told me to leave. So yeah, I just said thank you, and that was pretty much the end of the interview. So my main suggestion to you guys would be that thoroughly study your subject, like especially if you're going for an honors course like economics. If you're going for a BBA course, then also study one of the subjects in detail so that if they ask you what your favorite subject is, you can say that particular subject and they'll ask you questions from that. It was very academic heavy is what I can tell you, and you should prepare as well as possible for that particular section. So that was it for today's episode. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please make sure to subscribe because I will come up with more such useful content in the future and hope to see you there with me. Thank you.